This is the church that belonged to the seminary that was built mainly with the money from Monsignor Lennon, who was buried in the graveyard just outside, just literally the other side of that back wall behind the baptismal font. The church is an unusual church because it was built for the seminary. So this here used to be the altar rail going across here. So you've actually only got about a third of the church for the congregation. All the boys, all the students were actually inside the altar rails on the sanctuary. And they were, of course, the choir as well. So that's why you've got the choir-style benches. Because many of the masses, particularly in the days pre-Vatican II, would have been high masses, pontifical high masses, all sorts of singing that was done, some of it Gregorian chant, but all sorts of other music as well. And music was very much a feature of the liturgical celebrations in Blairs. The other features to mention in the college chapel here are the baldacchino and all the woodwork and statues on the altar. They all were put in by a Belgian architect about 10 years after the college chapel opened. And you might say, well, why was it put in 10 years later? Because unfortunately, they discovered dry rot in the church within about 5 or 6 years, and a lot of the interior had to be taken out, and it's then that all this marble and the woodwork and the decoration on the altar was all put in. You've got a lot of the materials in this building, come from Meyer of Munich, and they're still a company in existence today who actually produce all these items for churches. So the Stations of the Cross, even the Pieta here on the altar, the benches themselves, I think even the stained glass windows, but all of these things came from Meyer of Munich. So what you have here in Blairs is very much the very best of materials, the very best for God. And that, again, would have translated into the boys' consciousness. The boys would have spent probably about an hour and a half in this chapel every single day, and probably longer, obviously, on a Sunday or a feast day. In the morning when they got up, they would have got washed, and then they would have made their way down here for morning prayers and Mass. And then immediately after lunch, there was a quick visit, and it was a quick visit. I mean, it was literally 2 or 3 minutes. And then for about half an hour before supper, there would again have been rosary, benediction, novena, some sort of spiritual reading or talk, something like that. And then for about 10 minutes before they went to bed, they would also have come back down here for night prayers and the beginning of what they called the grand silence. So the grand silence basically stretched from when the bell went for night prayers right through until the bell went for breakfast the following morning. This was all in silence, the grand silence. And in fact, the grand silence was one of the major rules in Blairs. If a boy was found to have broken the grand silence, some people say if he broke it 3 times, he would be expelled. I'm not sure that was literally true, but that's how serious it actually was. So it meant it was good in many ways. It meant, for example, when the boys went up to the dormitories at night, it was silence and you could get to sleep. There was no chattering. I know, having been a teacher and taken pupils abroad on various school trips, sometimes 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, and they're still talking to each other. That didn't happen in Blairs. And then the other thing was just simply coming down to the church in silence, and then obviously being in the church again in silence, very much part of it. One or two of the other items, there's a statue here, which is a statue of Mary, and as far as we can tell, that actually came from the old college chapel. So the one that was part of the old college. So that makes this statue at least 120 years old, because the church was opened in 1901, and it obviously was used over there. You've also got, you might not be able to see it too well, but in the alcove there, you've got a very grand organ, and it's thought to be one of the best organs in the northeast of Scotland. And again, the very best for Blairs and for all their celebrations, the fact that there was daily Mass here. And the other thing, one of the other things to mention is daily Mass here. Obviously, after Vatican II, you had concelebrated Masses, but prior to the Second Vatican Council, all priests had to say Mass separately. You know, you could be a deacon or a subdeacon at someone else's Mass, but you weren't celebrating. That only happened after Vatican II. And so when you had this staff of maybe 14, 15, 16 priests, all of them had to say Mass on separate altars. So throughout the college, and there were 2 in the cloister, and altars or oratories where they could actually say Mass. And obviously there would have been 1 priest just saying Mass here in the church. On a Wednesday, every single Wednesday, there was the Benefactors Mass. And that would have been, as the name suggests, for all the benefactors of Blairs. The stained glass windows round the altar reflect some of the benefactors who actually gave money to Blairs. Up here you have Holy Family there, and the left-hand side of it is James Lennon, who gave all this money, and his brother John, who was also a priest, Dean John Lennon. And then the other windows, the central part, you've got other people. Unfortunately, I haven't been able to find out yet who James Weir Esquire is of Banff, but still working on that. The other 2 panels in the centre are both priests, and then the one on the left-hand side is, and I'll just read it out, it says, "Pray for the benefactor John Gordon Smith Esquire, Minmore." And he turns out to be the son of the man who founded the Glenlivet distillery, George Smith. George sent both his sons to Blairs. So this is going back to about the 1840s, so about 10 years after Blairs was founded. Some of the boys who came here, like these 2 sons, came here just for the education. They weren't thinking about the priesthood, but they were subsidising the boys who were, because they were paying full fees. They didn't obviously go on for the priesthood, but John does continue to be a benefactor to the college right the way throughout his life. And so, unfortunately, just a few months before the church was opened in 1901, he died, but he'd already made sure his name was remembered in the stained glass window there. Some of the other things to mention, I don't know if it was a happy coincidence, but you've got up here 3 Scottish saints, St Columba, St Margaret and St Ninian. So you've got 2 male saints and a female saint in the centre. And then on the other side, you've got St Teresa, St Andrew and St Bridget. So you've actually got a gender balance, which is quite important in this day and age. So I don't know if it was by sheer chance or whatever. Obviously, St Andrew is Scotland again, St Bridget Ireland, and perhaps reflecting obviously quite a large number of the boys that came here to Blairs were of Irish ancestry, or indeed Irish families sometimes who had moved into the west of Scotland. And then the other one, St Teresa, the best I can suggest here, and I think it's probably accurate, is that when Aeneas Chisholm, Father Chisholm, the bishop, was actually trying to organise all this, he had a special devotion to St Teresa of Avila and prayed for her intercession to make all of this a success. And when it was, he had that as a thank you to her. And indeed, I think it was in 1916, which is strange because it was during the First World War. He actually was over in Paris and actually bought a bigger than life-size statue of St Teresa of Avila, which was actually at the bottom of what they called the prof staircase, the professor's staircase in the main college, the main staircase when you came in the front door. So he had a great devotion to St Teresa, and that's why that stained glass window is almost certainly there. The other thing on the altar here is obviously since the Second Vatican Council, like in many Catholic churches, the altar's been moved forward. This Last Supper, a sort of sculpture of Leonardo da Vinci's Last Supper, it used to be below the tabernacle at the top there. And it was a gift from the former students of Blairs they actually had a Blairs society, and that's basically what they were, former students of Blairs who were priests, most of them, and that's what they gave when this church opened. Because Monsignor Lennon paid for the building, but all the fittings and so on were paid by other donors. Then roundabout you've got on the left hand side there St Andrew, then the 4 evangelists, and again St Margaret. And then over here you would have had where the priest would have sat pre-Vatican II times with a deacon and a subdeacon. And then these ones over here, which also had a kneeler in front of them, that was for the other priests on the staff who were present, and they actually sat according to seniority. So the rector usually would be, if he wasn't saying the Mass, he would be the far away one, and then coming down, depending on how, first of all, what role they had, like if they were a master of discipline or whatever it happened to be, or whether basically after that the seniority was decided on the date of their ordination. Okay, so this is the Blairs Museum, and it's located in what was the former main sacristy. So it's a large room, because as I said earlier, 15, 16 priests sometimes would have been on the staff here in Blairs, and indeed when there were special occasions on, or even a funeral or something like that, then there may well have been 40 or 50 priests getting vested in this room. You get some idea of the scale of it as well from even these drawers. There were 4 cupboards going all the way along there, and these exhibition drawers now, you can see, were made of 2 vestment drawers in the past. So you've got something like 20 sets of vestments, 4 cupboards, so that would be 80 sets of vestments, something like that there. And then obviously in these other cupboards, which are now used as display, and indeed there's a big safe as well, all these chalices and ciboria were also stored. And some of them gifts to the college. This is Priest Gordon that we've mentioned before. He was the man who helped extend and convert the Mingus Mansion into the original Blairs College building, ready to open in 1829. This is his ciborium here. And you've got other chalices. This one here was one of the one that was tended to be used by the main celebrant in the college Mass in the church. And it, along with this monstrance, came from France. So you've got lots and lots of artifacts which obviously were all being used on a daily basis, some of them. But the important thing is that this was, as I say, gives you the scale again of the college, the fact that 15, 16 priests and all their the vestments and chalices and all the other things, altar servers and so on, were looked after through the other side there. But it just shows the scale of the whole operation.
Thank you so much for watching these videos about the Scottish Catholic Heritage Collections Trust and our wonderful treasures. Blairs Museum is located just outside of Aberdeen, and we are open from April until September. And you can learn about visiting arrangements and how to book your ticket at www.schct.org.uk. And when you get here, you can learn all about the history of Catholicism, Mary Queen of Scots, the Jacobites. You can help us by purchasing goods from our shop. You can also do that online, or you can also support us by donating to us online.